But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
Hello and welcome to World Blockchain Roundtable. I am your host, John T. Swift or Die. Thank you for joining us. This is the 96th episode of World Blockchain Roundtable. Today on our panel, we have Distant, aka Dave, joining us from Den. Litecoin Lisa, aka Mighty Layer on Den.social. Satoshi Sean joining us. Joe Dragon from Dragon Chain, and Greg from Rivet joining us today. How's everybody doing?
Two thumbs up from me, man.
Thank you for keeping that short. We have a lot to get through this morning. I appreciate it. All right. So first, we're going to talk about the lot that we gave out on last week's episode. Each host last week received 133 lot. Each topic contributor from last week is receiving 41 lot. Last week's theme was World Blockchain Blockchain for Restaurants by me, T. Swift or Die. And I'm going to get 41 lot for that. So go and suggest really cool topics if you want to make a whole bunch of lot like me. And keep in mind that these ownership tokens are great. And you get perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. Great. And the results for... Is this what it is? Yeah. Fall of stablecoins. Yeah. The results for our April themes are going to be the first one is going to be the fall of stablecoins. Game show 2.0, mini games for each reply. So that means you have to go reply to it. So I can make mini games for all the replies. If there's no replies, I'm going to have to get really creative. And it'll be great, but go reply, put some questions, comments, whatever in there. And we're going to have a lot of fun with it. Our third one that we voted on, blockchain for accountants / taxes, right there on April 14th or 15th or whatever it is. And then our last one, Wales or World Order, blockchain dystopia. I'm not 100% sure what that means. I guess there's just a lot of people that own all the like blockchain, maybe. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, how it can go bad.
Yeah, how blockchain can go bad.
BDCs, yeah.
So, also in recent news, we have changed the format of this show. This was proposed by Joe. So we're going to limit the show now to 1 hour. And then after that, we're going to switch over to Twitter Spaces, where we're going to be doing questions and kind of more of an open format in that area. And we're also going to cover current events there. So if you love our current events and hearing what everybody has to say about topics, you got to tune into that after you watch this entire episode 3 times. Then you can tune into that.
Yes.
Great. Twitter Spaces. And they can find the link somewhere in here, I'm sure. Also, I have been voted to be made the permanent host. So whenever I'm available, I will be hosting this show. If you don't like it, let me know what you don't like, and I'll try to fix myself so you're happy.
It's not final yet. Somebody needs to go in there and vote it, or it'll resolve later today, right?
All right. Well, it's not passed yet, so if you still don't like me, go in there and put a bunch of deny stuff in there. See what happens. You can do it. I'm super excited to be helping out on this show and keeping the fun going. Great. Also, please let me post in the World Blockchain Roundtable. That would be nice. Or is that the next one? Oh yeah, we'll change the order. Oh yeah. So that one passed.
I thought it did.
All right, we'll find out. All right, and then we're also looking at switching the order of the shows in April to change accountants and taxes to week 2 and the game show to week 3. So that way it'll fall on actual tax week. And also, I think game shows will then fall on 420, which will be fun. Great. Anything else in here? I think that's it. Host says slot holders to post in the layer. Yeah, let me post in the layer. I guess it looks like it already passed, so we're good. I'm making a bunch of little clips of the show. So if you want to see like little clips and remember all the great fun that we had, go and check out the clips. And now the theme for this week. The theme for this week is fighting fraud in cryptocurrency industry. This was nominated by Derox, who's going to be receiving lot, for having his suggestion be awesome and having everybody voted on it and love it. So if you want all that affirmation and love, go add suggestions as well. Great. So
if you want affirmation and love,
there you go.
Come to the right place.
Over.
Denver, everybody loves you all the time. Great. So since we're not doing current events, I want to jump right into questions because we have a lot of stuff to get through, and I'm sure like we have a lot of opinions on things going on this topic. So I'm going to read the question, and then I want us to go down the line and answer these like one at a time, and then afterwards we'll have some open discussion and see how that goes. So question 1, and also if you don't have any thoughts on it, totally okay. I'm sure there's plenty of things on here that
I love this first question.
Question 1. What would an ideal system that eliminates bad actors without the need for government regulation look like? Dave, do you want to kick us off with this question?
Sure. This is like the thing that got me into blockchain and Bitcoin and stuff like that. And it's basically what Satoshi Nakamoto was talking about in the very beginning about how to do things differently. And like, do we have the technology today to reinvent solutions to problems that typically were solved with centralization and central government control? So that ideal system, I mean, it freaking exists today. You can see it in Bitcoin. You can see it in projects like Monero that have the attitude of like, we don't care about the governments anymore, and we want to just show and prove that we can do this ourselves. And we don't even need to know who each other are for it to work properly. So it's that, right? That kind of thing. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Is like just the basic form of what Bitcoin is. So there's I mean, we can come back around to it, but that's kind of like where I go immediately is the ideal system looks like. I would say Bitcoin. I'm going to say Monero. Today in 2023, I would say Monero looks a lot more like Bitcoin as it was originally proposed. So that.
Lisa, thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Dave and just point out Veritasium and, its original use case to get rid of the middleman and allow for peer-to-peer transactions and capital markets. And that is, the heart and soul of Bitcoin is for us to get rid of all those middlemen, and that gets rid of all the fees. It gets rid of all the bad actors. And that way we're really exchanging energy with each other. So for me, that's the answer.
Cool.
Greg.
All right, so I'm going to add a little bit of a different flavor to this because those are all right things, I think. And I think the risk that we face with these systems is that we take them and we do what we always do when we get a new system. Like we tend to build a thing that looks too much like the last thing, right? So the biggest mistake we can make with blockchains is structuring them so that we have structures that represent old school stuff like gateways for regulators and forcing people to have intermediaries so that the Bank Secrecy Act still applies and stuff like that. We don't want to let this system become, just a really efficiency saving type of system designed to perpetuate the existing world order. We have to shift the structure so that it relies on the technology as it's purely implemented.
Great, thanks. Joe, what do you think about this?
Maybe with your microphone on.
Sorry about that. There was noise back here. No, I would say basically, if you abstract away from monetary, because if this is about an ideal system, it's not necessarily about currency, not necessarily about financials. And the main point, although applied to financials, that Bitcoin, Monero, and others have used, that is maybe not ideal yet, but approaching it, is that the behaviors that matter to determining whether it's a good actor or a bad actor for this actual question, the behaviors that matter need to be on chain. They need to be provable, ideally transparent, but they need to be provable, or else you don't know. And that, if the current traditional system were actually transparent, you might not need blockchain, right? If they were all good actors and everything was visible and you could see, oh, everybody's following the rules, there's no insider trading by Congress, there's none of that stuff, you don't, maybe need blockchain. But the problem is everything they're hiding, and that there are bad actors in all of these systems, financial and otherwise. So what blockchain can do is put that behavior on chain and then apply rules to it, which, there are tons of different models, prediction markets, bounties, mining that reward or penalize people for being bad actors. So the more you can put on chain, the more ability you have to make an ideal system. And that's why scalability and all the rest of that stuff matters, which is, maybe the boring or technical side of it. But yeah, anyway.
Great. And Sean, what do you think about this?
It's rough going last when you're the dumb guy here, I tell you.
You are not, sir. You are not.
Whatever. You guys are just nice. To piggyback on what everyone said, like what Joe said, there's so many tools when it comes to blockchain. And, we all say this, blockchain really doesn't eliminate fraud, but it makes it transparent. And if things were transparent, we wouldn't really need it. But even if things start out as transparent, they'll change it down the road. Yeah. So that is one of the good things about it. When it comes to this, I think back to like 2017, the whole through the ICO craze, it was so, and we talk about this and have for a long, long time, that there was a lot of crap that came out, but the ideas that came out were just like, for me being the dumb guy, it blew me away that just reading white papers constantly and so many projects, didn't get off the ground, but those were feasible ideas. And they were like, oh my God, you could do that. Wow. You could do that. It was just insane. You can fix everything that's wrong with eBay. You could fix everything that's wrong with this, huge entity that's been around with this legacy system, because of all of the tools that blockchain brings. It's awesome. But y'all pretty much covered most all the bases. Just like Joe said, there's so many tools when it comes to blockchain that bring responsibility and transparency to the individual player, where a lot of times, the way you look at the system, like with 3-letter agencies, everyone can hide behind the shield of, well, this person, that person, where when it's on blockchain, it's all connected to you. It's there. It was, you did this. You can, it's transparent. You can see that it was you. It wasn't someone else. I'll have to get to that. We'll circle back. It's all right there. And like Joe said, with penalizing and with rewarding, and also penalizing, like with staking. If you have staked or something in the game that you can lose if you do something wrong, that's another thing.
So I really like what everybody has to say, but I want to pose this question to the panel about this idea. We mentioned that like with this, right, you kind of get rid of human error a little bit using blockchain, right? You kind of get rid of people being able to be shady. Well, if all these systems are created by the same people or created by people, can't we always find ways to back end and mess with things? Like, what really makes this the end all be all of getting rid of bad people? Because in the end, it's still humans, it's still people creating blockchain, creating these systems, creating whatever it is. And then like my follow-up question to that is like, should we just let an AI create it for us? So therefore we get rid of the human evilness, right, out of it. Yeah. So go ahead, Greg. First hand I saw that shot up there.
So I think the right way to think about this is through competition, through the lens of competition. We have open systems for a reason. All the software, everything, you don't like how it works, you can literally clone it or hire somebody who knows how to do that and change it so that it works a different way. You can even make an exact copy of it and stop using it the bad way. And the other projects, they're going to lose users to the ones that do the right thing. So competition can solve this problem directly without any intervention.
So I like the idea that like competition can solve that, but then what happens when there's a monopoly, right? Like you look at like Facebook, people would want to leave Facebook, but there isn't like another place that offers it.
That's why regulations, because if with regulations you have less opportunity to compete, right? That's a huge issue where, for whatever reason, they're coming down on projects that would push more individual freedom for people to, I want to join this network. I was like, oh, you can't because you're an American, or you can't start that network and sell it to an American. You do so many things that.
I got another thing of cake I can make. Sorry, hit the mute button.
So now we know what the conversation's about.
So great. So you're saying with regulation, we'll be able to keep monopolies from forming and having kind of bad actors in this.
No, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying with regulations, you get monopolies forming.
Right.
That's what they're for. That's great. Why they exist, right? Mm-hmm. So, the government school propaganda is that we all need regulations in order to avoid having the monopolists come and take over everything. Just like, what the fuck ever, right? So
if you've ever, and this is an experience. Honestly, like I didn't understand this completely until, it's within the last decade, easily. But yeah, Joe's absolutely right about that. It is the case that it is more difficult for monopolies to exist, or maybe let me flip that. It's easier for monopolies to exist with regulation, at least in the form that it is in the U.S. today. It's what we're seeing. We're seeing it firsthand. Mm-hmm. And if I can go for a second on this question, John, the end all be all to like bad actors and stuff, I don't think that should be the goal, because it's like, it's one of those things that sort of gets in the way a lot of times, like perfection being the enemy of progress, that sort of thing. I used examples, of Bitcoin and Monero as my ideal network to answer that question. But I do see Bitcoin as the most amazing proof of concept I've ever seen in my life, as something to prove that an idea is viable and is open source for anybody to take and apply it to other things that maybe, weren't the original intended purpose. So it does, John, on the question of humans building it in the first place, Lisa talks about this, and I've heard Sean talk about this, where the on-chain data can't be explicitly trusted just because it's on-chain, just because it's on a blockchain. It does, though, reduce the window of opportunity to be a bad actor. It does make it more difficult to be a bad actor. And so if we can iterate on that concept, instead of pushing to be like perfect right off the bat, if we can iterate on making it more and more difficult over time, seeing where people find loopholes, seeing where people find exploits and ways to attack that system, they're teaching us how to strengthen it and how to, over time, make it more and more difficult for bad actors to be bad actors.
Yeah, and that's one more point to add to that with a DAO and some open system, that you can also evolve that algorithm over time, so that you can have consensus of the users when changes are made, but you can make changes, like say a hard-coded protocol can be brittle, and it's kind of difficult to get it right the first time, right? It's much easier, and that was philosophically the approach we took at Disney, because there's so many, especially in a more complex system, there's no way to determine up front. It's much better to put things in place and then look at the actual behavior, what actually happened. We have it all on chain, we have proof that this is the order that it happened in. So how should we adjust these features or algorithms? Anyway.
I would add to that, and this is something that people who don't develop it might not know. But one neat thing about blockchains is they're really, really simple and efficient to code changes into. It's a lot less code. It's a lot less complex logic. There's a lot fewer places you have to make changes in order for something to evolve in the way you want it to. So the process of iteration, has worked great for open source software so far, but it's supercharged with this. This is built for iterative improvement.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much. And let's go on to the next question. Let's see. And this question, we're going to start with Lisa.
Well, I think just transparency through the whole process. You're talking about, individuals are building it. If building it is open source, if everything can be checked, if everything can be looked at, it's a lot more feasible to be able to trust that whole system and trust that blockchain. So that's one of I think the most important thing about all steps of the process would be transparency.
Okay, great. Yeah. Let's move on to the next question here. And we'll start with Lisa. What about when regulations become fraud? And we kind of touched on this, so we'll spend a little less time. But yeah.
Are we allowed to talk about current events?
Imagine that hypothetical.
Yeah.
I know, right?
I think we're seeing a lot of that play out in real life right now, with the overreach with SEC, allegedly, and other things, and watching that, stifle innovation in America. So it's a significant problem, and it does affect, it affects, like I said, innovation in America. It affects, and it's not that this innovation won't happen. It's just not going to happen here. And with that affects our economy. It affects, it's going to affect generations here, because it will happen. It just will happen somewhere else. People are building on blockchain. It's just, Garlinghouse was blatant with it. He was like, it really doesn't matter what happens in this case. Ripple already won. We're building and growing in the rest of the world. America will be left behind.
Yeah.
So
that's what bums me out
happens
the most currently. That's what bums me out the most currently, is seeing that unfold in real time.
Yeah, and
day.
Especially when the SEC is not elected by we the people, and Congress is not doing their job. Congress is supposed to be making laws about these issues, and instead we're having the SEC reach in with antiquated laws and trying to apply them to new technology, and really just make a mess of things. And after baiting people to come in and talk to them, which, back in the olden days, I can't remember what they would call it in when you were working with the police, where they would they'd bait you. And then if they did that to you, entrapment. Yes. I would, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think that there's some kind of, sure smells like it. So that would be my answer. It's dangerous.
So I think we all kind of agree on that. It was like, okay, regulations are going to lead to fraud, and we're going to have these issues. but it doesn't seem like there's a way around it. Like Lisa even touched on, it's like,
I think
this
this
is
community
America.
itself can do this a lot. That's where it doesn't need to be the government. Just like the government shouldn't be touching our money. We, the people, can do this with the blockchain. You know what I mean? The companies, the transparency, back to the first question, that's the answer. And then the community holding what we see in the transparency accountable. I think that's where the truth is.
I think that's something also with what we talked
I
about.
I want to keep us going in order for this too, though. We'll make sure we hit everybody. But Greg, go ahead and give us your thoughts on this.
Sure. So I think really the key for me here is that this was going to happen no matter what. This whole system, technology, when it's ready to happen, it happens, right? The question is, what kind of future do we want it to be? Do we want it to be a future that is based on the values that this country was founded on? Or do we want it to be a future that's based on the values that were created somewhere else, like China or or Russia or Iran or wherever, right? Like any place that welcomes this tech is going to end up being its home if other places are unwelcoming to its development. And right now, what we're seeing is regulators in this country worried that their legacy system, with all of its sort of corruption and the pipes by which that corruption is transmitted through money and politics and politics and money, right? We're seeing that play out in a way where the system is trying to defend itself despite this tech being sort of coming into its own. And it's going to happen. The question is, do we want it to happen here or not?
Great. Yeah, Joe, what do you think about that?
I mean, blockchain does have an answer, whether or not we think it's realistic that adoption would ever happen. I mean, the fact that you could sufficiently, and I think everybody here would agree, that you could encode most, if not all, laws in smart contracts, and they would be, in most cases, although it'd take a lot of practice, but of course, a law does itself, but they would be actually objective. They would be actually transparent, right? Where everybody knows we do not have justice in the Western world right now. We do not have liberty in the Western world right now. We do probably not even have a real vote in the Western world right now. And I think there's a growing consensus, if it isn't already past the majority, that think those things, which is pretty sad. Something like a directed system that would make laws more readable, human readable, for the people who are supposed to be following those laws, that would make them expire and things like that, so that you wouldn't be having an infinitely growing book of laws that we are all supposedly following, even though we don't know what they all are. And the problem with it, though, is we can't even get on the simple points of a currency. We can't get real adoption in the decentralized world, and I do think it is a good and evil thing that, and I don't think it's only hey, it's not happening here in the United States. That sucks. It's stupid, if anything. But it's not happening in the Western world. It's not happening in the competitors to the Western world, in Russia or China either, because they are also against this because it's decentralized. So you're talking about all of these powers, the powers that be, that hate each other and want to kill each other, and none of which we agree with or have any control over. And the decentralized world can't get their shit together to compete. And why is that? I mean, Greg, you say that it's like, well, tech happens when it happens. That's typically true, but it's very often, at least historically, only happened in a centralized way. The only thing that we can show as a decentralized way that happened is literally the mining of Bitcoin. That's the one thing that has absolutely happened that we have beat them at. But the problem is it's so directed towards just mining Bitcoin without any consideration for its actual use or adoption, that it's not really, and it hasn't answered the question. So it's kind of a black pill thing. But there is, I'm still confident it will happen, but damn it, we just need to stop. I don't know. Some of the things that have happened in the crypto world are nonsensical, and basically have ruined it. So anyway.
Yeah, Sean, you had some thoughts in there. What were you thinking?
I think I forgot like a couple of them, but I don't understand. I mean, the question is a good question. I don't understand how it is on the topic, because I mean, we have fraud's illegal already. We have laws in place, and they're not enforced really. That's how the regulations have become and allow fraud. I mean, Lisa touched on it with Congress is the only one who's supposed to be able to pass laws, and then these agencies are set up to enforce the laws that they pass, and the agencies have become their own little mini governments to govern the people of the United States. The ATF, just with the pistol brace thing, if anyone that's not Congress can make a U.S. citizen overnight become a felon, that's something's wrong. That's not how it's supposed to work. But that's what's happening in any agency, the EPA, whoever. They're like, oh, this is now illegal, and they could say, hey, in 3 months, if you have any plastic bottles, you're a felon, and that's not like crazy or far fetched. I mean, it is a little bit, but these agencies can do that, and that's not how it's supposed to work. And then it takes months and months before it goes to the Supreme Court to be able to say, oh, no, you can't do that. Meanwhile, people could be arrested, jobs could be lost, lives could be ruined. And is there anything that can be done after that? Because that opens. See, this is not a good question for this topic. But yeah, and another thing, to just say something about what Joe said, it is kind of taken aback by that, because the purpose of being a Bitcoin miner or validator is to support the chain. And I always told people just get into mining years ago when it was easier. When I first started, it was like, oh, I'm making nothing with these little tiny I forget what they were called, little circle miners. I had like 20 of them, and I was making $5, $10 a month on each of them. But it was really cool that I was a miner. I was part of the network, that I was valid. It was a big deal to me, and I felt more included in everything. And I told people, just get a couple of these little miners, for like $50 each or $30 each or whatever. And then you get into it, you learn more about it. It's not just number go up, you see the whole big picture. And even that aspect of it was just completely been taken over, where it's just about making money. There's just huge mining farms. It's not really about validating or securing the network like it was supposed to be.
Yeah, people are really focused on that number go up aspect. Greg, you wanted to respond earlier?
Yeah. I just wanted to touch back on the fact that we don't see some of these things happening, and really comment more on sort of where our regulators are failing us. Because right now we have a situation where the regulators are hostile to us. But if they were to work with us and work within the constraints of the technology, mold it to be structured to defend the integrity of that tech where it's been attacked, we can actually see the United States inject its own values into a system. Of the idea of freedom that we like to make fun of these days in our political circles, right? That could be the point of blockchain. We could basically be the people who unleashed this on the world if we chose to be. And what we would unleash would be, inherently pro original values of this country if we did. Now there are interests against that, and that's what I think we need to address. I think regulators need to stop being corrupt and start working with us more ingenuously.
That makes perfect sense. And Joe talked about that earlier, about if we want this technology to have the values of our, like, Western values instead of Chinese, like values of China and Russia and things like that. But yeah, Joe, you want to add some more to
that's I think probably the crux of the issue is cultural, because our values, our Western values, are actually what we're seeing right now. That when you have a bureaucrat that thinks they control the world because, oh, I'm a bureaucrat, I'm better than you, I came out of MIT, I'm smarter than you, I used to work at Goldman Sachs, whatever, There's no reason that I should listen to you at all. There's no reason I should go and talk to Congress, my supposed oversight, right? In fact, I think I'm going to take money from my law firm, and yeah, they probably have people that are that they represent as well, that they're paying maybe under the table, whatever.
Speaking fee.
One way or another, the end result is our culture is totally screwed and black. And with this, we have that's literally treason, right? I mean, that literally, if you're taking money as a bureaucrat to do something to protect some larger interest, which I would say, and if anybody's ever worked at any of these places, you would, I mean, and anybody who hasn't would be very surprised at what happens in the halls of cubes at the FBI. It's blown away at the waste in money, the graft, the cheating, the horrible contract politics. And it's all about money and power, right? And that is not what the founding values were. We've gotten far away from it. As soon as you go with a large central government, that's what happens. So if you want to fix it, then start charging people with treason and just start buying rope, right? Buy futures and rope. That's what's needed. But is that actually going to happen? I have no idea.
I agree on that 100%. You know that I do. I think that it's part of the, like you basically said it. It's not so much culture, but our government's so screwed up in the beginning process because of it goes down to the two-party system. The only reason that somebody might not get appointed is because they were appointed by this party, so that party wants to stop it. And it should, like I keep saying, it should be about the individual. You shouldn't appoint someone to the EPA that worked for chemical companies and doesn't care about the environment. You shouldn't appoint someone to the ATF that has crazy hates firearms. You shouldn't appoint someone to ICE that goes against everything with securing the border. It's very, very simple. And look at what happened with the transportation, with Buttigieg being put there. It's just like, here you go. Oh my God, this is a real job. Oh my
Planes
God,
go fast.
thing. So it goes back to the beginning of it and the whole start of it that is completely messed up, and it's trickled down terribleness.
I like that trickle down terribleness. That's great. Yeah, we're gonna go back up to Dave. What do you think, Dave?
So I think I actually like going last. Sean doesn't like it. I like it because most of the things have been hit already. So I'll just highlight a couple of things that I heard just now. Lisa and Greg both talked about the innovation and the building and the commerce and everything that goes along with that just going elsewhere, right? If regulators become impossible to work with or oppressive to entrepreneurs, that's absolutely true. Sean mentioned something that is really important to me. I want to highlight that, which is that you could be doing something perfectly legal and within your rights today, and tomorrow become a felon. And that's a really good argument for privacy, right? I'm an advocate for privacy. I like the idea of having private conversations, even if they're over the internet on your phone. And so, like, I'm always pushing, for people to use things at the very minimum, use something like Signal to where everything's not just in the open, because you see that. And if regulators are becoming evil, basically, if they're committing fraud for whatever their incentive is, and we don't have insight into their motivations, then we have to assume that we could potentially become a criminal tomorrow, next week. And so whatever we're doing today, we should probably just, start adopting a privacy mentality on that. And I guess the last thing I wanted to say was, I think Joe mentioned a lack of liberty, that our vote may not count. There's varying degrees of opinion on that. And I think that a lot of us in the U.S. at least or are kind of spinning our wheels on arguing about who's right about that, whether the vote counts, whether it doesn't count, whether we have liberty in this country, or whether that's a facade. But to me, the most important thing is that question exists, that there is that argument, that there is debate over whether or not those things exist today, or that we have those things, or that they work properly. And I think that without caring about who's right or wrong about it, acknowledging that the system is untrusted by many should be enough for us to say, okay, well, let's apply these new tools that we have to fix that problem. The problem of not knowing for sure, or being able to personally or independently validate what we're being told is true. So that's what I'll say. I just wanted to highlight a few things and add a couple of nuggets in there. But that's it for me.
You always give me a little bit of hope every time I talk to you, Dave. I love it. Just always make me feel a little bit better about the world we live in. I love it. Which perfectly segues into the next question. In your opinion, is the mafia investing in blockchain? So if so, is it possible to fight it? I would love to like kind of keep this as a quick one. We're just going to go with like a yes or no. No, or
2 sentences.
Two sentences. Great. I was going to say like kind of like a yes or no kind of answer. And then also if you want, like, I have a feeling like the mafia today's day probably looks a little bit different than like The Godfather. So maybe like what today's mafia might actually look like that's investing in blockchain. Greg, do you want to go ahead and go first for this one?
Yeah, sure. I kind of want to challenge the premise, right? Like, I don't think that we should be using the financial system or the transaction system to fight organized crime. The Bank Secrecy Act is a travesty. We need to roll it back. Cops should get out and do like police work, where they go on the street with guns and take out the bad guys where they're doing bad stuff. You shouldn't sit on their butts and read the transaction ledger and just block anything that looks kind of like it might be organized crime. Like that's an infringement on everybody's rights.
Okay. So yeah, if there's mafia out there trying to do this stuff, keep going. But we're gonna go find you. Joe, what do you think?
Probably not as much. Definitely not as much as as law enforcement will tell you it is happening, and probably not as much as should be for the good of the world, actually. Because if crime were on the blockchain, it at least would be traceable when it was determined that it was crime later, right? But yeah, I actually think it's radically less than the powers that be would tell you.
Great, yeah. It's you probably only hear of the big things. You don't hear of all the thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions that are perfectly fine. Sean, what do you think about this?
I don't know what you're talking about. This mafia thing. I think it's something made up by the FBI to forever bothering the Italians agency they got there in government. But I mean, imagine it's odd to think about the mafia and what's illegal, because so much of what it's based on, it's really not like prostitution. It's a moral question: is it right? Is it wrong? Imagine if they developed some amazing blockchain thing to set it up, and it would run flawlessly and fix so much. Or the marijuana industry. I mean, there's so much being built and worked on that. What if it was built by the mafia? What if they set it all up? Are they working on it? Like Joe said, I don't think they are in the degree they probably should be. Everybody makes the joke about blockchain. Bitcoin's just used for crime, and it's like, yeah, I remember watching that. Blow and go in there and there's all those ledgers everywhere. It's like, no, there's piles of cash. So I don't think the mafia really is working on blockchain. It gives transparency to something they don't want to be transparent.
And honestly, if they were working on it, it'd probably be really organized. So maybe they should be. Dave, what do you think? Is the mafia in blockchain? And if so, what did the mafia look like?
Yeah, that's I like what you just said about the organization, right? If it's organized crime, this is a really good way to organize.
Yeah.
It reminds me of plenty of other people have said it, but the person I love the most who I heard say it was John McAfee. he made this point about criminals always using the best tools available to them. Why would they use anything else?
Yeah.
You know, why would you choose to use a worse tool than what's available to you? So if if these are good tools, which they are, and criminals always use the best tools, which they do, then I would say, yeah, absolutely. The mafia is either investing. I don't know about investing as the question is put. They probably invest more into law enforcement and politicians more than they do this particular.
Yes.
Like they're not trading Bitcoin as a thing that they want to do. They're not investing in something and hoping for the number to go up, but they probably are investing in their own education to learn, is this something that we can do to keep ourselves safer while operating against law enforcement and things like that. So probably,
keep anonymity,
probably. They use the telephone. They, like when bank robbers adopted the V8 engine, like stuff like that. I always assume
bulbs, not candles.
Everybody.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say absolutely. They invented stuff that we use today, the mafia, right? They invented the lottery system, right? They used to run numbers in the local newspaper and pick winners completely outside of the system. And then today, everybody can go play the lottery at the local convenience store because that system was adopted, ironically from the mafia. So yeah, there's my take on that.
Yeah, call him Don Satoshi Nakamoto.
There you go.
You see Tony Soprano like bringing Joey Pants in and be like, Joey turns the laptop around. As you can see in block 8,423,000, looks like it's a little light. Looks like there was a move over here in his wallet. Hey, man, my wallet, I swear. Mine ends in OX4.
I love it. And if you want to see us all do impressions, vote for that for next month's World Blockchain topic. What impressions can the panel do? It'll be great. Lisa, what do you think about this? What's the mafia doing with blockchain?
So I think you have to change the question a little bit. Who is the mafia? Because meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Historically, the cities and the communities were taken care of by the tough guys in the neighborhood, and then the big guys in control decided that they should all put on uniforms and charge licenses instead of the tough guys coming in and asking for a fee to protect you. You now needed a license from somebody in a uniform. So yeah, I think they're all using blockchain. Who's the mafia though?
Who's the mafia?
It's a great question.
Like John said, the base mafia, it's the government.
Yeah, let's go into the next question. Unless Joe, did you have a quick comment on this one, or?
No, I mean, I would say that the banking cartels and the government, the bureaucrats and deep state or whatever you'd want to classify those as, are probably far bigger a threat to our individual liberties than would the mob be. And that whether the mob is just doing their thing or whatever else, it's what's going on elsewhere. CDBCs and everything else is far worse than anything the mob's ever done. So,
well, if you remove the government and say no, they're the government, they're not a mafia. If you look at the banking system, the Fed, it's all private shit that is so wove into the government. Yeah. I mean, that is literally,
own it.
That's 100% the mafia, and they own the government. It's all. You can call it bribes. You can call it
tyranny.
Intermediary.
You can call it lobbying.
Complex,
it's all.
right?
It's the same thing. It's just putting a different word salad.
Great. So that brings us into our next question. Let's take a look at that. Can anti-fraud coding be built into the smart contracts when creating a blockchain project, or will it always be something that creators will have to fight? It seems like there are always holes in the system that will be unveiled, and there's a picture. So what do we think about that? Joe, do you want to start us off with this question?
Sure. That's why, and he points to DIN. I would point to DIN. I mean, that's the whole point. And a lot of what Dragon Chain did And a lot of what DIN itself demonstrates that, DIN was built so that the smart contracts control the measurement of behavior, which results in the mining of matter, right? And so we purposely built them knowing that a DAO is going to have to be able to control them, and that the behaviors, and that we actually want people to find holes in the algorithms. And it's essentially a kind of an automatic bounty built, because they can earn more matter by doing things that were unanticipated. And if it's a good thing, then maybe we enhance it. But if it's a bad thing, then we can close the gap, right? And that's kind of the purpose, and that's why you have to have a flexible, scalable capability with a blockchain if you want to do things beyond just mining behavior, or which is what Bitcoin did it was the first time anyone ever did that. So you can't fault it for being as simple as possible, but you can't apply that to more complex behaviors easily. So anyway.
Great. And Sean, what do you think? You're muted still, by the way.
I agree with that.
All right, great. Dave, what do you think about anti-fraud coding put into blockchain and smart contracts?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is, right? Depends on how you interpret anti-fraud a little bit, I guess. But smart contracts are anti-fraud tools. You can add more layers to that. You can make it's I got this from Joe, but it's software. You can do anything you want. It's just software, right? But that's absolutely true, and it applies here. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You're seeing different ideas of what that means, right? With CBDCs, that's someone's idea of anti-fraud. That's someone's idea of, we need to make sure that we can defraud people in case the wrong person does something, because if they're criminals, we need to be able to defraud them. We need to be able to commit fraud against them to take their money from their account, right? That's anti-fraud, as long as it's from a central government perspective that wants that sort of control. Janet Yellen wants that sort of control, for example. But yeah. Yes, I don't know how else to answer it, but yes, absolutely. And you could even use decentralized tools like identity systems that offer a way to safely do things like make sure that the right person is the one that's controlling a particular transaction or things like that, without doing intrusive sort of like tyrannical stuff. You don't have to do it that way. Like, even if you want that kind of control, you don't have to do it the way that a lot of CBDC proponents are proposing. So that's the only answer I got right now.
Great. Yeah, and if there's short answers, that's great, because we still have 2 more questions to get to. Lisa, what do you think?
I got this from Sean, but I agree.
Love it. All right, great. Let's move on to the next question.
Wait. I got it.
All right, Greg. Sorry, one more.
So I think the key thing we have to keep in mind is the system itself is built to be anti-fraud, so long as we keep it simple. It's already transparent. We keep it simple, then everybody can understand it. So we need to resist the urge to bolt on like traditional structures, right? We don't want to have like, well, how do we know it's anti-fraud? We better build in a hook where regulators can come in and manipulate things in case someone cheats and we catch them. And we also need to make sure that we can find them and arrest them and throw them in jail after the men with guns show up. That's really more them preserving their purpose, if they're arguing for that, than it is a need, because the smart thing to do is to keep it simple, to let the system prevent fraud by being immutable, transparent, and public, right? That's what we have to do. We have to resist the urge to give in the argument that we need the overseers and their men with guns to protect us.
Makes sense. Let's move on to the next question. All right. How can crypto businesses work with law enforcement to help detect and investigate instances of fraud? And I feel like we've kind of like talked about that, about law enforcement and 3-letter agencies and stuff, sticking their nose into things and finding a way to be useful, kind of like Greg just said, and keeping their purpose. How can they still kind of do their job with this? I guess we're Sean, do you want to start with this one? And I kind of want to try to keep these quick because we do have one more question, and we're almost out of time. Okay, great. Moving on to Dave.
Because you've got the whole freedom aspect, and then I mean, of course you have to go through the full due process, not just open access to stuff. But I guess that's if those infrastructures were in place as to what information was needed, and people knew what information was available to those agencies with proper warrants, it could be segmented, I guess. Like, they don't just get everything. They have to get a warrant for, text messages on their phone. Then they have to get a warrant for calls. So it's not just, here's their browsing history here, everything. I guess that would be, you'd have more protections when it comes to working with law enforcement. If you get what I'm saying, because separate warrants would have to be issued. Your information would be even more protected. If it was, I guess on blockchain, it could be, and then those agencies would have to get proper warrants for it. Because I mean, you got to work with law enforcement. It's not an evil thing. Law enforcement isn't evil, but it's a very, very powerful tool. It's a very big power and authority that they have. So, and it can be abused very easily with real horrible life consequences. So I guess that's the only thing I could really say about it, is just that your information could be better protected and segmented as to what they have access to, because now it's just kind of, they would get access to everything in your account. And that's the way that they can kind of throw a net or fish, which a lot of times they do, to just get more information, to look for things. But yeah, that's, I guess, my.
All right. We're all the way back up to the top. Dave, what do you think?
Cool. Yeah. I would say this is a question about how can crypto businesses specifically work with law enforcement. I would say stop LARPing as a crypto business and actually use it for your business, right? A lot of what the public sees on the news as a crypto company or business that is gone through some situation with fraud and everybody lost money and oh my God, those companies are not using cryptocurrency or blockchain. They're pretending to be a crypto company, and they're allowing people to open accounts and paper trade tokens that they may or may not actually have. And none of it's actually using blockchain or smart contracts or any ledgering system that's transparent or able to be validated. And so, yeah, actually use the tech that you purport to support. And then the other thing is that the DEA loves Bitcoin. People committing crimes with cash are harder to track than people who can be associated by account affiliations and things like that. So I think law enforcement and crypto are not at odds with each other. They don't have to be at odds with each other. It can be a tool for freedom. It can be a tool for enforcement. It can be a tool for whatever you want to use it for, but it's just a tool, and you have to use it though. So there's my answer.
All right, great. We only got a couple minutes left. Lisa, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it goes back to choosing transparency and the community holding people accountable. When the community sees, that guy in the street throwing his piece of trash on the ground, then all of the community, could use blockchain to point to that and then let the authorities, hold them accountable. So that's where blockchain could show, with the transparency and the community holding them accountable. I think that's effective.
Yeah. And Greg, over to you. What do you think?
I would say that the most important thing is that crypto businesses hold law enforcement to their duty to follow due process and to not cheat and backdoor systems, because that lowers trust in them. and lowers their ability to find fraud because people don't want to work with them. So as a business person, like for example, at Rivet, we try to hold law enforcement to the highest standards. Like if they come to us with a request, we're going to insist that they follow due process and submit proper legal documentation. Then we're going to review it to make sure that it's good before we do what they want.
Greg say things gooder than me.
All right, Joe. Last thoughts on this. What do you think before we head over to Twitter Spaces, where everybody?
I tend to agree with everybody here that the legal things that law enforcement does can be done better with blockchain, and it can be proven. So it's not just, I say that Joe did this. I can actually prove it to you, right? And it can also be more transparent. So if they don't have things like gag rules, and which they do, they do a lot of things that blockchain even has better, more transparent functionality with things like gag rules, because you can actually do a provable canary system on hey, we can figure it. In fact, DIN has one built in. There's not in the interface, but you can actually there's an endpoint, and you can see if any of the canaries have been killed at a account level, a layer level, and a site-wide level, right? And nobody else does that. And it can be done.
For people who don't know what those are, Joe, what's a warrant canary?
Yeah,
it's basically,
I have no clue. It sounds super
it's
cool,
basically that if you can't, let's say we get a warrant and there's a gag rule on it, you can't tell people, hey, we got a warrant, watch out what you say or what you said. But if there's a canary and I don't know how exactly the legal side of it works, but it's essentially a double negative. So if the canary dies, canary in a coal mine, the canary dies, that this thing happened, even though I can't say this happened, right? Because I'm barred legally from saying something happened, but I'm not barred from killing the canary.
Right. You're not barred from legally saying that you've been legally barred from saying something.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So there, and we thought, it's an interesting thing, just as like, it's a demonstration of what could be done with that system, that if you do it at a profile level, a layer level, so if the layer's been someone's come in and asked, hey, what are the conversations in this layer about XYZ, or site-wide, right? So it's an interesting thing. Anyway,
I've got some thoughts on canaries for the Twitter Spaces too, so remind me to bring that up.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more thoughts about what we have on fraud and everything else, and ask your questions, that's where we can get a little bit more off topic and kind of a little bit more freeform over there. Head over to Twitter Spaces. We'll probably, hopefully, put a link in the chat here. So if you want to go hang out with us over there, you can. Yeah, that's about it. I'm like 2 minutes over. We'll do a couple really quick thoughts from everybody. Like 2 sentences, but like really 2 sentences about either where we can find you or something you want to plug. Dave, you want to go ahead and go first for me?
Sure, yeah. In like 3 hours, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on a DIN-DAO governance call. We're talking about DIN stuff. And so follow DIN on YouTube and check out the DIN-DAO layer on DIN Social to catch that. I think it'll also be broadcast on Twitter. So that's where you can find me.
Lisa, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so we are doing our annual Team Mighty event here in Oklahoma City. It's a 2-day event, April 21st and 22nd. We're fundraising to help a local crypto single mom that's fighting brain and lung cancer. And everyone's invited. And we're also looking for donations for items for the auction. So you guys can check out likequeenlisa.net and get all the information, get the tickets. You can join us in person or streaming online live.
Great. And Sean, what do you have for us?
Check me out on my YouTube channel and other social networks. I got the second part of the interview that me and Greg did is up. Issued everyone before it became cool in the last week. Everybody's getting an arrest warrant. They did it first. Check that out. Yeah.
All right, Joe. Any last things to plug?
we're good. Just I'll be over on the other show for a little while.
If you want to hear
Fun.
Joe's plugs, go over there, and they're amazing. He sent them to me earlier. They're fantastic.
Yes.
Mind-blowing plugs, so go check it out. Greg, what's the last thing you got for us?
I would just like to direct people to Pirate Wire's Nick Carter wrote a really amazing post this morning, published 6 hours ago, called "Did the Government Start a Global Financial Crisis in an Attempt to Destroy Crypto?" that makes a pretty compelling case. And is definitely worth looking at in the times we're in right now. So I would check that out if I were you guys.
Interesting.
Great. And last thing for me, if you want to know anything more about me, you can find out more about me at johnbranch.info because I don't have time to plug everything. Thank you so much for being here, and bye.
No mechanism exists to make payments over a communications channel without a trusted party. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party.